Chair and members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to talk today. My name is Mike Paradise. I'm a builder in the Rochester area. I am a past chair of the State Builders Association. I'm talking to you today as a builder. I've been in the business now. 41 years ago, I graduated from a vocational program in carpentry and began pounding nails. And for the last 25 years, I'm the president of Bigelow Homes, which happens to be one of the largest builders in southern Minnesota. Last year, we closed about 120 homes with an average sales price of $272,000. So I feel like we're doing as much as we can on the affordability issue. We did that in Rochester and 9 of the surrounding communities around Rochester. So I think I have a pretty good feel for the pulse of what's going on in the southern part of the state, at least our corner of the state. One of my biggest concerns right now as I speak before you is the condition of our housing market in the Rochester area. Currently, as of today, we have 249 homes on the market in our community in Rochester. That's down from quite a ways. I mean, a healthy market should be probably somewhere around 800 homes. Of those 249 active listings, we only have 83 of them under 300,000. So the shortage of the inventory is a real major issue. And how does that equate to what we're talking about today? And that goes with, are we building enough houses to meet the demand? And the answer is no, of course. What can we do differently? In the city of Rochester, our building permits for single-family attached and single-family detached homes went from a high in the boom years of almost 1,000 permits per year to 2017's, well, it dropped down to almost 200 a year at the bottom of this recession. We rebounded back up in 2017 to 429 permits. 2018, Rochester had 346 permits, a 20% drop from 17. In 2019, we only pulled 289 permits, a 17% drop in permits. So our permits in Rochester have been going down. And before you ask me the question why, I mean, it really boils down to the availability to build on the lots. What do we have for subdivisions for lots and in what price range? It's pretty obvious when I talk about the amount of homes on the market and price range of the homes they're in, is we need some less expensive housing stock. And I've been asked over the years, you know, Mike, why don't you just go out there and start building $150,000 homes and our issue goes away? Well, the answer to that question is we can't. I mean, it is impossible. So the reality, when we build a new home, there's a lot of pieces that go into it, but to realistically think we're going to build them in a price range below $200,000 probably isn't going to happen. But I'm going to urge the committee that the broader picture is that we have a problem with our whole housing continuum, the housing market. So we always want to concentrate on the least expensive homes and we want to ignore the more expensive homes. If we don't keep an adequate supply across the whole gamut of housing, we're not going to promote people moving up through the system. So right now, as we build a home, as a higher priced home, there's a domino effect that actually has an impact all the way down to your affordable housing. So in reality, the majority of our housing stock is affordable. We've got to figure out a way to move people out of some of that housing stock. And that goes to some of the things we're talking about today. Zoning. Zoning's a big one, and development. So as we look at higher density zoning as higher density housing, more affordable housing, we run up against a couple of obstacles, and one of them is zoning. And in most of the communities that I work in, most of their zoning manuals and most of the zoning is old. Rochester just updated their comp plan after almost 30 or 40 years. They're going to go to work on their land development manual right now, and the projected time frame that'll be done in about 2 years. So that's probably going to be a little bit long for us to have any immediate relief. So right now, if we want to do higher density, we're limited to where we can do it. I mean, because of the zoning requirements. Number one, and number two is the neighbors. You've got some NIMBYism that plays a big part in that also. So I think as we look at that, each community could probably do a better job of identifying the housing type they need and rewarding that. I mean, to go back to one of the governor's task force on housing, which I had the privilege of sitting on and co-chairing the home ownership committee, one of the recommendations was to launch a public-private partnership to forecast demand, set goals, and measure progress. I don't see that being done in our communities. I don't see the communities identifying what their demand is. And I'll use Rochester for an example because I'm from there. We have twofold. We have an aging population that's looking for a different type of housing stock, and a lot of that is some slab on grade, smaller lot villas. We also have a lot of people moving into our community with medical issues. So we're not necessarily creating the housing stock based on the community needs. And the question that I always ask is, whose responsibility is it to define the needs of that community, the housing stock that we need? I think that's a part where the state could help with. Actually helping the communities in these partnerships identify the housing stock. Once you identify that housing stock that's needed in each community, that's where I think you can incentivize or reward development in that particular area. One of our biggest concerns in Rochester, of course, is the infrastructure to grow. So as you drive down to Rochester, of course, we got cornfields around the whole thing, right? What's our problem? Well, the cost to extend the sewer, the water, and the services out there is the big issue. Who's going to pay for that? Can we push that all onto development, onto the future home buyer? We've proven that pushes our affordability envelope. Can we invest in infrastructure? Yes. Can we do it as a community, a state, or even as the federal government? I believe we can also. But I think we need to identify the housing stock. So we need to make a commitment to what the need is in the community. Because in reality, if we provide housing for our empty nester baby boomers, which I happen to be, and my wife and I, the two of us live in a 5-bedroom home, as we produce the housing stock that some of those people will move into, it's going to open up the housing stock that we continue to talk about here, all the way down to a level that is probably some of our least expensive housing stock. So I think we need to identify the needs in each community. And the task force also made the comment, flexible design and zoning policy can facilitate decisions to build innovative housing types. So as we talk about this, I think the public appetite and demand for housing may be different than what we've seen in the past 41 years that I've been in the business. So I would also, as I move through some of these smaller communities around Rochester, they don't have the resources some of the larger metro areas or even Rochester or larger towns do to develop good comprehensive plans and even planning, land development manuals. I think, well, I see everybody inventing the wheel again in each individual community, and there needs to be maybe possibly some help in helping them design the plan that fits their community. And I want to be sure nobody thinks that the state can design a land development plan for every community. Each community is going to be unique in their own needs, and I think that if there were some tools there to help them with the zoning, once we can change some of the zoning, it takes away some of our issues we have with NIMBYism. If we approve higher density housing in different areas of the community, we can avoid some of the tough public hearings that we go to and some of the political consequences for our leaders that are trying to make those decisions. So I think the zoning, the land development manuals become a very important part of that. So I'm going to move on to permitting and building codes. I know Mr. McClellan talked about building codes. I don't want to beat that to death. I personally have sat on some of the committees on the building codes for the past 20 years. So I was there when we created the energy code that didn't work. I was there when we were fixing the energy code. I was there in this last technical advisory group as we went through this next version. So the issue with codes is you create committees to look at these codes. I'm going to use the National Electrical Code as an example, because that's going through, and the impact of that code is going to probably raise the cost of housing anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 per home. The reason for that is a lot of little changes and a couple of big ones. The new National Electrical Code is going to require surge protection, whole house surge protection. It's also going to require exterior emergency disconnect for the power, the ability to shut the power off from the outside of the home. Those are a couple of big items, and those are probably the biggest drivers in what's going on. So the process of the National Electrical Code, of course, it's a national code, and I've taken this from some of the information they've sent out. This cycle, they had to sift through 3,730 public comments for changes to the codes, and it went through 18 code-making panels. So maybe we should feel lucky, this is what it boiled down to. But the bottom line is, as we try to evolve in the code making process and we convene groups that look at ways to make the codes better, it undoubtedly is gonna make it more expensive. So I think we need to implement a more affordability piece to it, or another, and I hate to say another layer, but something where as we look at these codes and we look at what effect they truly have on affordability. And do that overall, because I think as we go forward, I mean, I've been through this code making process for over 20 years. If we stay on par with the next 20 years, we probably won't be here because we won't be building any single family homes. I think it's gonna push us out of the affordability. The other real concern I have is the continued talk about the stretch codes, or the individual codes. I was told, meeting in Rochester the other day, that Rochester might try to get their own ability to write their own codes for more energy efficiency. I think that would be very, very detrimental to our construction industry. I think a lot of the people that talk about that don't understand the processes that we go through to develop codes, and to all of a sudden, off to the side, create our own set of codes, community by community, based on some energy savings, could be disastrous to not only that community, but I think to our entire code making process. So I'm a firm believer in work with a process that we've fine-tuned over many, many years, and have your say in that, but keep an even keel on what's going on with affordability as we write those codes. Those were the two issues I was going to talk about, and once again, the biggest thing will be infrastructure, lots, and being able to develop. Builders are only going to be able to build homes if they have lots to build the homes on. So with that, I thank the committee.
Thank you, and we did have a bill to try to address that infrastructure and try to get the state to do more with the smaller developments in the communities and help offset the cost of the infrastructure, because that is the main roadblock that we hear everywhere we go throughout the state. So thank you, and thank you for your input. Can you share with the committee here on that average house that you're building down in the southeast Minnesota? You know, square footage, bedrooms, bathrooms, garage, lot size, just kind of a real quick recap.
Yes, I can. I mean, we currently build in 22 different subdivisions, so we will build anything from a single family split level home to a large townhome project, or even some custom housing. The most affordable that we're doing right now is still going to be the attached, the townhome, be it 2-story, and also our single family split levels. The communities that we build in, the further out from Rochester we get, the lower the lot price. That has a huge impact on it. But I would say the most affordable piece are probably our twins and fourplexes, and our smaller ramblers and split level homes.
Thank you. Questions, members?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Perez, I appreciate your comments on I think that when we talk about the housing market, every facet of it being upside down. I too am a baby boomer, and when we look at the goals, we've heard it, I think we've heard it a couple times here, and if you're out and about in the community, you hear about it all the time. People can't afford to move out of that 5-bedroom home because they're moving into something that's half the size, shared walls, not my most desirable way I want to live, but they can't afford the $100,000 or $200,000 increase in cost to downsize. And I also serve on the aging committee, and I don't think people understand, we need every community in Minnesota to figure out how we can do multi-generational housing the right way. And that covers every facet of planning, zoning, our comprehensive plans. How do we get our family members, because if we want care for them, you're gonna need to be close by, because the care isn't going to exist in what is our traditional nursing home, or even aging in place. We really need to do that, because, but I don't see anybody doing it. I don't see anybody nationwide or statewide talking about those issues. I don't see our communities doing it. I think we can guide them and give suggestions, but each community wants their own identity. But I appreciate bringing that up, because I think we have to do it in everywhere we go. I appreciate for recognizing it. The question I have is, on the building codes, and you talked about the national electric codes, unfortunately, we didn't, and Dolly's still here, but what's in that? What's coming down the pipeline? Those are all still real costs that are gonna be borne on us, and is it materially going to matter in the increased protection of our homeowners? I think we switched from ground fault, right, those things make sense, to arc fault now everywhere. I'm not sure they've solved the problem, besides just adding more cost. At the ground fault, oh, yes, we do, in the right spots. What do you see these changes, and you're certainly closest to this process, you see those adding significant value in the proposed, in the whole house surge protection, as well as the emergency disconnect?
I'm not sure I'm qualified to talk on the need for that. I mean, I'm making the point as the builder, if we continue to look at our codes and try to find a way to make our codes safer, it's gonna add cost. Will it create a safer environment? Undoubtedly. How much are we willing to pay for it? That's a decision before this committee, before the associations that are involved in it, so.
Thank you, Mr. Paradise, and I do have one more question, Mr. Chair. So, you did highlight when your last statements were about the local planning, or local code control, and we certainly want our communities to plan, but when it comes to larger energy efficiency, our building codes, all those things, I want them at the state level. What have you seen in the realm of, you highlighted codes, but have you seen any issues about energy production? Because I also worry about those, and we should keep them, I'd like your opinion, do we keep them at a state level as well versus a local? Because they see that as the next step. Minneapolis has already said they want production 100% by 2050, and within the city boundaries. Well, they're not putting up windmills, and so that means solar. And they're gonna mandate that. I think that would further exacerbate housing affordability. And I guess, have you seen that movement anywhere else outside of Minneapolis?
Well, I guess I would really discourage against having individual or different codes within our state. I mean, it's confusing enough now as a builder, just to have the interpretation from one code district to another. The minute you start changing a code from one area to the other, you're gonna create some major confusion for our builders, and in the end, probably some real issues with the product. Plus, you're gonna have some real pricing, where it's gonna cost more to build across the street. So I think that's a dangerous path to go down.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for coming up from Rochester.
Thank you.